Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, bringing you another video for my cronies. This week, we're going to do a little bit of Cryptek tech and go over all of the different Cryptek units in the Necron's book and what has changed with them and how they've improved in 10th edition or maybe gotten worse. And there's quite more positive than negative going into this section with it, with a lot more Crypteks being playable. So guys, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the bell for notifications to get notified on the rest of the videos in this series, as well as comment down below with some of your concepts, things you have done, or maybe a piece to this puzzle, this Cryptek puzzle that I missed that might also help add another layer to all these combos, as well as help out other people in the community. Help us make Necrons and the Necron dynasties reach a higher win percentage than they're seeing right now. Now, granted, a couple of things have changed. One, Eldar getting nerfed, and Imperial Knights getting sort of nerfed. We'll see how that really plays out, considering I thought they were going to nerf the towering mechanic, but we'll see. Needless to say, one of the Crypteks for the new 10th edition that has shined and also was one of the ones most requested on this channel for me to cover and review is the Plasmancer. The Plasmancer in 9th edition was really not playable. He wasn't that bad. He was kind of like a living smite for us, where you could do D3 damage. You had to roll, and on a 2 or better, you could do D3 damage, mortal wound-wise. And then his gun wasn't too bad, so there was a little bit extra damage there. So he looked like he had decent stat lines. The defactors from him were two things. One, the cost. Actually, there was three major defactors. Number one, his cost. He was, I believe, like 80, 85 points, so it wasn't very feasible. Second, he took up one of the very valuable HQ sections that a lot of detachments needed for other Crypteks that were a little more powerful, especially with like the Chronomancer being probably one of the more powerful choices. It's tough to say between him and the Techno. I guess the Technomancer and the Chronomancer, depending on your list, would be the strongest two of 9th edition. But those were the two that everybody had, everyone would run. You'd see sometimes 2 Chronomancers, multiple Technos. Those were the guys. And that was usually the spot where the HQ points were spent into. Now, with the Royal Court, you could get multiple of the Crypteks into your army, but now it goes back to the point cost, and then you still have to get X, Y, and Z, and it just, sometimes the best option was to take a Technomancer as your warlord. I've seen many situations where that was, so you had all those extra points to then spend on the units that they were buffing, especially with the Silent King meta. Now, that's not as important. We have just infinite slots in a way, so putting these guys in there is not as hurting. Lastly was Assassinate. In 9th edition, a lot of players, myself included, would look at the character restrictions and think, how many points am I giving up for Assassinate? And try to tailor it back. Now, we can reanimate our characters, which at that time in that edition, that would actually stop those points from being scored. Now it doesn't. However, it's a lot more common for players to play off tactical missions and play tactical as opposed to setting it. Because if you set the secondary for Assassinate, you also have to set the other secondary as well. And that second one may not be as easily obtainable, which can put some armies in a disadvantage when going into a high character matchup where it's like, okay, cool. You may get this one secondary, but this other one is going to be very, very difficult to score. And you're going to max out your first one pretty easily. Or too quickly, or not too quickly, but quickly enough that the other secondary isn't going to happen. So that it's not as difficult or not as penalizing to take multiple characters and attach them into there. What it does turn into is a lot of our Necron characters really start increasing that squad cost, because we also have that compensation for reanimation that some of our guys have a little more of a price cost or a price hike versus what their stats would say. So what the Plasmancer does is he lets us get a bigger bang for our buck. First of all, I'll go over his stats real quick. He, much like all the rest of the other Crypteks, movement of 5, toughness 4, 4 up save, 4 wounds with a 6+ leadership and objective control value 1. The units that he can lead are Immortals, Lich Guard, and Necron Warriors. Now, I'm not going to talk about Lich Guard too much, as I really don't feel like the Plasmancer does well with Lich Guard. That's not his job, and that's going with his abilities and what he can do. His guns, on the other hand, he has the Plasma Lance, which is really pretty cool. 18-inch range, 3 shots, strength, ballistic skill 4, strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage. Now, if he's leading a unit, they get command protocols. The whole unit gets +1 to hit, so he'd be hitting on 3s. Very nice. Strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage. Real cool gun. And then in combat, he gets 2 attacks with the same exact stats. So again, 2 damage, not so bad, especially considering his attached unit more time than not is going to be Warriors or Immortals for shooting for his second effect. So the abilities. First of all, we have Harbinger and Destruction, which is most likely the reason you're taking him. While this model is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, successful unmodified hit roll of 5 up scores a critical hit. This means lethal hits, sustained hits. You're proccing on a 5 instead of a 6. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute. His other ability, Living Lightning, is basically our Gauntlet of Conflagration. In the shooting phase, select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible of this model and roll a d6 for each enemy unit in for each model in the enemy unit. Sorry. For each 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Now, this does not say that you need a critical hit to score it. So no, his first ability would not trigger 5 up for this. But that doesn't matter. You go into, you have a 20-man unit sitting in front of you. Use him first. Declare his ability first on the unit you're going to shoot at. Because if you shoot at the unit and you remove models, then that's less dice that you get for his Living Lightning ability. So you target the unit, 20 models in there, roll 20 dice, 6s, do mortals, and then you go on and shoot with the rest of your attack. Now, someone's probably going to say, but wait, mortal wounds resolve after the shooting phase. So this is an ability that is done in the, this is an ability that is done in the shooting phase. It's not technically a shooting attack, which again, another thing is this doesn't need to roll to hit because it's not a shot. It's a shoot. It's an ability used in the shooting phase. So this will happen immediately. Then you can shoot with the unit. So what are we going to attach this guy to? Well, like I said, Lich Guard is not really the best option for him. There's a lot of other Crypteks that do much, much better into him. Technomancer and the Orcan for the defensive buffs that it gives. This guy's home is with Necron Warriors and Immortals. So let's talk about these Warriors first, because I really like a lot of what goes on here. So the Warriors, first thing first, a little unknown, a little gem that I've talked to a couple of people and surprised them with this one, because this has never, ever, ever been a thing you can do with Necron Warriors for 2 reasons. One, Indominus and 9th edition introduced the Gauze Reaper. So the Gauze Reaper was a new Necron Warrior gun. And at that time, it was all or nothing. You could take a 20-man with Gauze Reapers or a 20-man with Gauze Flayers. Now, you can mishmash them. Exact wording here, because I got it right in front of me. Just read it out there. Any number of models can each have their Gauze Flayer replaced with a Gauze Reaper. So you can mix and match and have different combinations of the Gauze Reapers and Gauze Flayers in there. Why would you want to do that? Well, so one of the enhancements that the Plasmancer can take that I think would be a very good enhancement for it is the Veil of Darkness. So the Veil allows you to pick a unit up at the end of your opponent's turn, first big change for Veil, and then drop it in during your reinforcement step. One thing that I have noticed, I bet some other veteran Necron players can comment on this or might be shaking their head at this one, with when you drop in a 20-man brick of Necron warriors, if you have Gauze Flares, there's a very, very, very good chance not all of them are going to be in range. So you could take some Gauze with the Gauze Reapers, not all of them will be in range. So you could take some Gauze Flares to make sure that the guys that are on the outside still get to contribute some shots and give you a little bit of long range on there. Now, the other option, one that I've been looking at a bit, is our Monolith. So the Monolith, with its Infinity Gate, can pull a unit through the front of it that is set up within 6 inches of it. So if you deep strike the Monolith and you land that thing 9 inches away from the enemy, and then you put these guys out there within 6 inches, you could be theoretically 3 inches away from the enemy. Now, you can't charge afterwards, which is disappointing in some ways, but you can put these guys super, super close and tag an objective that either A, you have more objective control value with objective control 2 on the Necron warriors, or you can shoot them down and clear them off where your warriors are able to take the objective. The cool thing is with the Gauze Reaper, and in this scenario is the higher strength. That strength 5 is going to be crucial for getting us those force to wound, moving into some of the infantry units, as well as the fact that the Gauze weapons having lethal hits and being able to get the critical 5-ups, I think is personally one of our answers for things like Imperial Knights. Now, does that mean that a 20-man brick is going to land, shoot at an Imperial Knights, and because of lethal hits, that Imperial Knight is just going to be obliterated? No. But it gives us bucket of dice weaponry that can hurt a knight, that can get through one of the knight's defensive characteristics, which is that high toughness. And that's not just knights. That's all the vehicles in the game, all the vehicles that we're seeing. We have some really good anti-tank weapons. I think one of the things that's kind of hurt us in the meta right now and given us a little bit of a lower win rate is that with like Space Marines and Orcs and other armies like that, you look at their data sheets and you see weapons and additional weapons that you can take in the unit, and because of the way that we don't have to spend the points on those additional units, the weapons, there's no reason not to. I remember I was looking at someone's list that had Wraiths in it, and I was like, why are you putting guns on the Wraiths? And then I'm like, oh wait, it doesn't matter. Why wouldn't you put guns on the Wraiths? They're free. So there's no reason not to. So with some of the other armies and some of the other factions, it's a lot easier to slap in anti-tank or a little bit of anti-vehicle weaponry. Not even just knights, but transports and stuff like that. For Necrons, our stuff is a lot more linear. You know, we do have a really good combat to be able to handle vehicles. But as far as our range is concerned, either you're anti-vehicle, anti-tank, or you're not. And the Plasmancer helps us bridge that gap by giving us 5-up crits. Now, aside from like the Silent King, there's not a lot of rerolls we have, so we're not going to be fishing for additional hits, like in getting like, okay, we'll pick up everything and reroll for just those 5s. But getting those extra on the 5s and being able to have that extra damage out there that can put those extra wounds through, I can tell you is pretty brutal. I mean, when you pick up 40 dice and 7 of them are 6s right away, and you're looking at that AP1 coming across the field with it, that's putting, 3-up vehicles on a 4-up save. So let's say you get, and you go to roll the wound. Let's say you get 10 wounds off of that 40-man squad, rolling into a higher toughness that you need 6s to wound. So one, it's taking a segment, or it's taking a point of the sequence out of the dice, where now that 5s and 6s, now you don't have to then pick them up and roll again for 6s to be able to get the additional damage. So that helps to what is it? What is the word I'm looking for? It helps to reduce the amount of times that you have to roll the dice in order for damage to occur, and also diminishes the amount of effects your opponent has to be able to effectively stop you from doing that damage. So when you roll the 40 dice, you get 10 wounds in the end because you got a bunch of 5s and 6s, and then you're able to capitalize a couple of 6s. You got 10, right on the odds, 50% for a 4-up save. You got 5 through. We're looking at some of the units that we're investing points into, like heavy destroyers. And we're hoping that a heavy destroyer hits, wounds, and they fail to save. Or you hit and get a lethal hit, and then they fail to save, in order to be able to do a flat 6 damage. And that's one of the things I notice across the board with a lot of the Necron weapons and a lot of the bigger anti-tank guns, is we're still looking for like 6 damage is kind of that number. Whether it's 2 Doomstalker hits, the Doomsday Arc hitting for flat 4, we're still kind of in that column where like getting up to that 6 or getting 6 damage is the happy medium. Not a lot of hugely like D6 plus, like 6 plus D3 damage or D6 plus 3 damage. We're not seeing a lot of that out of Necrons, and not a lot of it out of some of the viable weapons. Like the Doomsday Arc I'm not Doomsday Arc, I'm sorry. The Doom Scythe is really expensive for the damage it puts out there. So what we get out of these guys is something that can give us the lethal hits to be able to force through dice, force through damage, and force that finishing blow onto something that we can put the heavy destroyers on, the Doomsday Arcs, the Doom Stalkers, to be able to put the good, strong damage onto it, and then finish it off reliably. And then turn around on top of that and still have a very strong anti-infantry. Because here's an interesting little note about this. The Harbinger of Destruction ability reads, while this model is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, a successful unmodified 5-up scores a critical hit. So when you fire Overwatch, take a minute and think about that. So when we fire Overwatch, it's, yes, we need 6s to hit. But this now gives you 5s and 6s are lethal hits. So, rules as written, as far as I know, the Plasmancer would give you Overwatching on 5-ups, that those hits are automatically wounds. Comment down below if I'm wrong about that, but I don't see anything with it. Like the Overwatch itself says you require 6s to hit. Yes, and that you can't modify that dice. Okay, we're not doing that. What we're doing with the Plasmancer is we're triggering an ability on 5s or 6s. So and again, this isn't a shooting phase effect. This is an effect that whenever you make a ranged attack. So when you make that ranged attack for the Overwatch and you roll a 5, although the 5 misses, because of the Harbinger of Destruction ability, because of the Lancer, it is a lethal hit, which means that hit automatically wounds. So as far as everything I can see right now, and maybe there's a piece to this I'm missing, and I'll look back through it and double check again for my own research, and I'll addendum it in the comment section. But as far as I can see, the Plasmancer is going to be giving us a 5-up for that damage coming through on Overwatch. That's really, really nasty. Now, we do, and honestly, Necrons, we do have a lot of really cool ways to functionally hit really well with Overwatch, from the Doomstalker to the Hexmark Destroyer. So I'm not surprised to see something like this that gives us more Overwatch capabilities. And on top of that, that means that this unit that we're getting aggressive with, whether it's with the Monolith, as I suggested before, or a Veil of Darkness hit, we're getting more bang for our buck out of this. Now, let's talk about the Immortals. Let's talk about them and what they can do with it. So again, we have the Gauze Blaster, which does lethal hits. That's very nice. And then we have the Tesla, which gives us sustained hits. So I like it. I think the Tesla would be fun. However, we have a lot of weird access to different bulk shooting. And to take that bulk shooting and then increase it into more bulk shooting. Now, maybe, I don't know. I think that we need that AP. I think the Gauze Blaster would be the target that I would go with. And these Immortal units on now would be a good place to put Anakar, the Traveler. Anakar can only attach to Immortals, and he gives +1 to wound. So with the Gauze Blaster and Gauze Blaster having the AP value on it, I feel like that's the direction that I personally would want to go. Gauze Blaster being AP 1 and also having 2 shots with the 24-inch range. I feel like that's the direction I would want to go with it. Mortals have a toughness 5 and a 3-up save, so you put them in cover. They're pretty bulky and resilient. Again, you have reanimation protocols you can trigger. Warriors probably trigger it better. So I like the Immortals with a Plasmancer. One of the things that I'm considering running, and when it comes, and we're going to go back to Warriors, is the Ghost Arc. So the Ghost Arc has gotten a little bit of an upgrade that we've seen from last edition. In previous editions, you could only put 10 dudes inside, 10 Necron Warriors. Now, there is that extra caveat that you can put the attached character in there as well. So we don't have a lot of super speed. We had some last edition, a lot of our speed came from Wraiths, Fly Mechanic, being able to do a pregame move as well. Those gave us the speed to be able to cover the board quickly, and a Veil that we could pick to use at any time at the beginning of our turn to open up our field more. Kind of don't have that really. We got slowed down a little bit, but we got more resilient. The Ghost Arc, I feel, brings that back. So the Ghost Arc, you can move it forward and then disembark a 10-man squad with Gauze Reapers, which is one that I've been very high on for the Plasmancer. And you put the Plasmancer inside. So now a 10-man squad that gets out of a Ghost Arc, disembarks, lands on an objective, which now you don't have to worry about being X amount of inches away and stuff like that because you're making a move. You get out, Plasmancer's there, Ghost Arc's there, 10 warriors with Gauze Reapers are there. Take all of that, funnel it onto some infantry that's trying to be crafty and get on that objective, and boom, wipe them out. Now your opponent has to make a decision. Can they take out that 10-man squad in one round of shooting? Because if they don't, you have 2 triggers that are going to hit. 1, the Ghost Arc. 2, the Stratagem, if you choose to use it over there. And that means that that warrior squad is just going to keep coming back up, especially if it's in range of an objective like I'm hoping for with this unit. It's going to be tough to move. It's going to be really tough to move. Now, how well is a 10-man going to stand up to the different weapons and different units in this edition does concern me a little bit. It does concern me that that unit might just get pasted off the field. And considering that we're talking about the Ghost Arc's cost in points, the Warriors, and the Plasmancer, we're coming in around 300 points for that unit. So what else costs 300 points in this game right now for this unit? Well, if you have other I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who play Necrons and also have additional their armies. And a lot of the stuff that like Marines are putting out there, well, there's a big price hike on their initial stuff. We're getting a transport, a unit, and a character for around 300 points that can really comprise an entire flank. That really could be an entire flank of your army that moves out there gracefully and can take an objective that doesn't have as much attention brought to it. So, and the Ghost Arc having a 4-up invuln is no slouch trying to take that thing down. So my pick and my vote for the combinations that I like best with this is I like the 20-man brick of Gauze Reapers with a Monolith and a 10-man with Gauze Reapers coming out of a Ghost Arc. And I think that the Warriors are the ones that benefit most from the Plasmancer over the Immortals. Now, I think the Immortals really do benefit from it well. I do. But because of the fact that it is a character that gives that unit, and it's the attached unit that it gives the buff to, I feel like the Warriors' reanimation mechanic and how much they can get back on those reanimations allows that unit to keep moving at a stronger consistency and higher rate. If you go and veil or move a squad of Warriors, or Immortals, you're going to have to end up within 24 inches to shoot at minimal because of the Gauze Blaster's range, which means that could trigger Overwatch, which means that you lose guys and you lose efficiency. Yes, same can be said true for Warriors, but because of the fact of the one Lancer buffing 20 guys versus one Lancer buffing 10 guys, I feel like that's kind of where it starts to get the ball rolling and get gears going for the Warriors to be a stronger pick for the Lancer to join. I think that the Immortals do better with a Chronomancer attached, which we'll talk about in another video, than the Plasmancer. And that's my personal opinion. I don't now. If you're listening to this video and you think, oh, okay, so that means I need to take the Plasmancer out of my Warrior Immortals, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying, because that may not be my vision and my mindset for what I look at and how I play Necrons. I think that the Warriors are the better place to put them. And if you're this is more for the person who's kind of second guessing and going, man, should I put the Lancer with Immortal? Should I run it with Warriors? And give you kind of my 2 cents and my opinion on where and how he does best if you want to run him. Now, the Immortals, though, it can still be a very strong option because of the Immortals being toughness 5 and because of them having a 3-up save and everything having cover now. It cover just being all over the place. Having Immortals, which are a smaller unit, 32 millimeter bases, but smaller, 10 guys, might be easier for you to thread the needle on that. Necron Warriors do get kind of costly over time. And if you're running big bricks of Warriors to move across the field supported by a Reanimator, you might not have the points to then throw towards more Warriors to splash out there that start to fall into a point of, okay, bam, they get blasted away, bam, they get blasted away. And then you're losing so many guys because you don't have enough durability behind these things. 10 Immortals with a 3-up save and 1 wound apiece does concern me as far as durability is concerned. It's nice, though, that with reanimation protocols, we can still get those guys back. And keep that flow going. But the Warriors are the ones that have the best access to different reanimation protocol abilities, just because of their D6 reanimation or the D3+3 on objectives. And trying to move towards objectives and hold objectives is the name of the game. So I feel like the Plasmancer, again, in those scenarios, does better in Warrior squads because of what Warrior squads can do over the course of the entire game. And that's my take and my opinion on this guy. I think the Plasmancer is an absolute gem. Absolute gem. He went from complete obscurity to a 55-point, completely playable addition now to the Necron army. Very cheap, very easy to slot in there into a couple of units, and not one that gets overshadowed by things like Technomancers and Chronomancer. The Chronomancer is significantly different, which again we'll cover later. Technomancer is super strong still, but he's super strong for his role. The Plasmancer's role gives us that forward push, gives us forward push for reliable damage that not only is strong versus infantry, but also able to do extra chip damage more reliably than some armies are able to put out on their infantry. You know, like when you look at some infantry squads and they have, for example, at Grey Knights, storm bolters and even the side cannon isn't a strong weapon to go into Imperial Knights or vehicles where we have this lethal hits proc, as well as, like I said, this Overwatch proc that after you hit, you land, you shoot, you hurt something, and then it sits there and you sit there fiddling with one command point going, all right, what do you want to do? Where do you want to move? I can shoot at you and crit these off fives. I really like that. I think that a single Plasmancer has a place in there. Would I spam 3? Probably no. Could I see myself running 2? Yes. I really have considered the fact of doing 2 Ghost Arcs, 2 10-mans with Gauze Reapers in them to compose either left and right flanks or a center crash and be able to disembark these guys and put down heavy fire, living lightning, everything just boom, boom, boom. And once again, with living lightning being an ability that you use in the shooting phase, you can use living lightning off one, use living lightning off another, and then shoot with them because you're not activating them for a shooting attack. You're using the ability living lightning. Now, if that's going to be errated or FAQ'd or changed to be a shooting attack, we're not allowed to do that. I doubt it. I doubt it. That's such a minute ability, and it really isn't that impacting in a sense. It's just kind of weird that it's a unique effect for it. The fact that we have a unit that can kind of break sequence in the shooting phase to be able to shoot with, to be able to use this effect in the shooting phase to do mortal wounds and do damage before we start shooting. And then you shoot, and then he's got a cool lance, so you can pick up another Marine and just go, hey, I'm going to take that Marine out by myself. So that's my take on the Plasmancer. Like I said, he's cool. He's really, really cool. I'm glad to see that he definitely has a home, and it's just, what do you want to do with him? Where do you want him to be? And how many do you want to take? I think 2 is the maximum I would ever take. I don't think 3. I don't think running 3 would really be the best option, because at that point you're losing that Cryptek spot on some other units for things like the Technomancer. And when we go and start talking about these guys and the enhancements that you can take on these guys and the strengths you can have with them, I think that 2 is a good sweet spot for it, especially the units that you're building to have it, because you want to build units for the Plasmancer. Technomancers and stuff like that kind of have Technomancer is big 20-man brick. Technomancer feeling the pain. Kind of cut and dry there. But the Plasmancer is a little more crafty. Plasmancer, we got a little more things we can do with it. Now, one thing I didn't mention before I sign off on this video was the Night Scythe. So the Night Scythe lets you disembark a unit from it. The issue that I have is the Night Scythe is not as fast as the Monolith or the Veil. The Monolith, when it deep strikes, you can use the ability to port a unit in the reinforcement step. So when the Monolith lands, you are in the reinforcement step. So you can then pull a unit through at that same time. So the Monolith is 1 turn faster. The Night Scythe, you cannot disembark the turn it comes in. And the reason why this happens is, and kudos to Facebook chat when I was talking about this in there, the way someone explained it to me. I've been looking back trying to find it so I could cite the person who explained this to me, but they explained it very, very clean and very nice. So when you move to the reinforcement step, you're not allowed to move any other models. You're allowed to bring models and place models based on reinforcements. When you disembark, it's a move action. So you can't conduct a normal move, which the disembark would be, after a unit has arrived via reinforcements. So you cannot disembark after you deep strike with the Night Scythe, which means that your opponent can blow it up and cause damage to the guys getting out and not ever be able to really use them effectively. At the same time, if that doesn't occur, you still have to wait till the next turn before they come in there. So the Night Scythe to me is just too slow in comparison to Veil, Ghost Arc, and the Monolith. Veil might be the second slowest because of the fact that if you go first, then you can't Veil that unit. But if you go second, at the end of your opponent's turn, you could select a unit to pick up and then Veil on turn one. Not the most end of the world thing. One thing I've kind of noticed, at least a feeling I've had so far with the game, and granted, I'm going to be playing against Knights here soon, so we'll see if I still feel the same way after that is, I feel like we're not losing entire armies and a lot of units initially on the first turn by going that person who goes first anymore. There's a lot of armies that have a strength of wanting to go second. And I think Necrons with Veil of Darkness have that same concept. I've noticed that, especially because of the fact of being able to pick up off the table. Now the Reanimator doesn't kind of handicap us, where the Reanimator before would really handicap an army, since you'd have to spend 2 command points to get the reanimation beam on a unit, and then your opponent could just stop shooting at that unit, and then you just wasted 2 of your command points, and then command points got cut, and it was just, it was ugly. Now you have that ability that if you go second, your Reanimator's still functioning, and your Veil, you can go, okay, I see what my opponent's done. Boop. Excuse me, get late over here. Boop. Drop the unit down and spray across the field. Yeah, Veil's got a little weaker. It was easier before just to pick the unit up on your free will and drop it over there. But this is kind of how a lot of units work when they come off the table. It happens at the end of your opponent's turn, and then you get to place them back down. And I think that is a nice little balancing for the person who goes first and the person who goes second to be able to maintain that flow with their army. And the person who goes first doesn't want to completely scream across the field, for the fact that then they open their backfield for those pickup and the deep strikes. But yeah, that Plasmancer is going to be in that scenario. He gives you the ability for that critical damage and that extra 5 up that is really, really necessary for being able to put that extra damage on vehicles that we don't just get freely. We can't just spam a melta gun or throw a couple little plasma guns in here because they're free in that sense. We don't get that with our infantry. We get that with destroyers, but you have to buy the destroyers or heavy destroyers, and you have to buy a unit of heavy destroyers. And these are the things you have to purchase that are extra outside of it. So if you run this infantry, you don't have the anti-vehicle, boom, Plasmancer. Plasmancer gives you that extra little punch. And definitely, if you haven't tried them in your list, you're missing out. Give the Plasmancer a try. I definitely would give him I would give him a B+. The only thing that holds him back from being an A, in the sense, is the fact that he does not provide anything to the Lich Guard at all. Because of the fact that this is a ranged buff, one of the units he can attach to, he does really nothing at all for them. So that's the only thing that I would say gives me the fact of giving him a B+. His point cost is very strong. He slots into units and gives a different ability than other Technomancers and other Crypteks do. And he's just really, really efficient. Again, the only thing that stops him from being an A or an A- is the fact that he doesn't provide anything for the Lich Guard. And yeah, and I think another thing is the fact that we don't have rerolls. We don't have a lot of them, and that's not necessarily a detractor to him, but it kind of weakens that ability. If we had rerolls with ease across the army, this guy would be falling into an A+++ category, where you would start seeing 3 of him every time, and you would have your reroll agent, and you drop a unit in there, and you'd watch 3 units, all with critting 5-ups that can reroll dice, and boom, Necrons need Oath of Moments. That's what we need. Necron, Oath of Moments, and just obliterate stuff. That might be what we see with those codexes, Now, as I say that, I mean, keep an eye on that. That's a big one to keep an eye on. So when those codexes hit or whatever they may be, if there's faction specific changes that we see inside that you can take like different style detachments, if there's one that gives us an Oath of Moment similar ability, this is where that Plasmancer is going to shine. The more rerolls you can get to hit, the more damage these guys are going to do. All right, guys, man, that's where I'm going to cut it off for this video. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about the other Crypteks and all the characters in this coming week. And I got a couple things coming up. One, I got a game with Lane here. It's going to be Imperial Knights versus the Grey Knights, little night-on-night action. And later this week, I think I'm just going to, for fun, I want to scan across my Necrons and show some of my conversions and some of the stuff I've worked on, just to give all my other overlords out there some ideas. Maybe you're looking to add a model to your unit, or you like something, but you don't like the fact that everyone's model looks the same way. Maybe give you some ideas and show you guys some of the stuff that I've worked on to make some unique Necrons for my army. Guys, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.